Hello guys, welcome to another exciting edition of the Leadership for Growth and Development TV show. Our theme for today is providing leadership in challenging times. And we have an awesome gentleman, someone who's well knowledgeable when it comes to the business of leadership, both in public and possibly the private sector. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, join me welcome on set, Barrister Karibi George. Barrister Karibi George, sir, welcome to the Leadership for Growth and Development TV show.
Thank you, and well, many thanks for having me on this program.
You're welcome, sir.
Yeah.
I had a bit of a challenge digesting your profile. For a man who has this very warm, calm demeanor, looking very young and energetic, I had the challenge of going through a 5-page profile. This is enormous. Damn. In spite of this intimidating profile, sir, how can our guest and us meet you, sir? Let us get you know you.
My name is Karibi Tamunoemi George. I was born in the early 1960s in Port Harcourt. My parents are from Buguma, Asaritori local government, even though my mother is actually Yoruba from Ibadan in Osun State. I attended State School Churchill Road, Port Harcourt, and Baptist High School, Port Harcourt, for primary and secondary education. And thereafter, as a boy of just about 16 years old, I found myself in Jos at the University of Jos, where I took a degree, first in English, BA English, and then subsequently MA Oral Literature after my NYSC. I have had varied working experience as a lecturer at the old River State College of Education, which is now Ignatius Ajuri University of Education. I have also had a stint in the media as features editor of the Tide Group, and then a senior sub-editor books of Sunray Publications Limited. And currently I apply my livelihood as the director of Administration and Supplies and Head of Public Relations at the River State Universal Basic Education Board here in Port Harcourt. So I am a man of many parts, you might say.
Yeah, really many parts. When going through your profile, I discovered that I took away stuff like you were a teacher, a lawyer, a mediator, and a communications professional. All that in you. Sir, how did you achieve all this?
Well, when I first veered into the media from lecturing, I had this idea of becoming a public relations practitioner, so I undertook a course leading up to the diploma, the professional diploma in public relations of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations. While I was doing that, I realized that I also needed to be an advertising practitioner, you know, to have the fullness of all that communication provides. So I also took a diploma in advertising of the Advertising Practitioners Council of Nigeria, now Advertising Regulatory Body. And then in the course of that, I had always dreamt of being a lawyer. And so I enrolled as a student of law at the River State University of Science and Technology, now River State University. I graduated from there and then went to the Nigerian Law School, where I obtained the barrister at law and was called to the Nigerian Barr. In the course of working as a staff of the River State Universal Basic Education Board, it also occurred to me that I needed to be familiar with that environment in all ramifications. So I took a postgraduate diploma in education from the National Open University of Nigeria, and it was on that basis I got registered as a certified teacher by the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria. Now, in the course of my involvement in all these professional activities, I have, by the grace of God, grown to become a fellow of the Nigeria Institute of Public Relations.
Wow, impressive.
I got my fellowship in 2012, December 2012 at Harcourt, following my presentation to the Board of Fellows of a paper entitled Government Relations Through Radio Programming, a study of Tuesday Morning Live, or the Radio Reverse program that was originally conceived and founded by Florence Ekie, my mother in broadcasting.
Yeah.
And then I am also a full member of the Advertising Practitioners Council of Nigeria. Now, as a lawyer, some of the technicalities of litigation do not quite sit well with my psyche as a person.
Okay.
And so it was one of the reasons I was inspired also to become a certified mediator, because that's more conducive to my nature, particularly as a communications person. And I see myself, and I'd like to be seen generally as a communicator who is interested in communication that would heal the human psyche, So that's basically what I'm all about. And even though right now I perform the duties of an administrator, what I do is I bring to bear on the performance of my duties what you might call the customer relations service, because we deal with a lot of teachers, many of whom are regrettably ignorant about their rights and their responsibilities. And so I provide opportunities for them to come into a full understanding of the value that they have as human beings, the value that they bring to society as molders and managers of the minds of young ones. And when a person recognizes his value, his worth, you can be sure that it makes him feel much better as a meaningful contributor to the business of social relations. Yeah.
Very well, sir. One very important take, from all that you have said, you said you see yourself as a mediator.
Yes.
And mediating and communicating professionally, what does that exactly mean? Can you break it down so the layman can understand it?
Well, first of all, mediation is an aspect of dispute resolution, but it is the form of dispute resolution that relies on information to help people come to an understanding of themselves, their desires, their needs, and then agree, because it is possible to have a win-win situation. Yeah. Stephen Covey would call it the third alternative. In life, we have disputes of thesis and antithesis. I say one thing, you are opposed to it, and I'll give you examples. Even in the piety sayings and proverbs that we have, they say something like absence makes the heart fonder. Yeah. And yet there is another converse that out of sight, out of mind. Both positions are true. But how do you find that balance between what seem to be two extremes? It's essentially to listen to people, understand them, their motivations, their egoistic concerns, and then meet them at their point of need. And a favorite example, usually given by mediators, is you have two children who are fighting over a piece of orange, one orange. Now, the ordinary thought would be to just find a compromise. Okay, divide the orange into two, let each person have one. But if you listen to those two children, you may discover that their interest in that orange is actually different. One may be interested in the juice for his enjoyment. Another person the other one may be interested in the peel for his school assignment. So when you cut the orange into two and give to the two parties what you have done is compromise. You do not satisfy them. But if you listen to them and understand, not listen to criticize, not listen to attack, you will discover that one wants the juice, so you give him the juice, and the one who wants the pill for his biology assignment or something takes his pill, and both parties are satisfied. That's what mediation does. Helps individuals to understand what they want, and then the mediator is the one who, as a neutral, is able to let them have what they want happily without
rancor.
Yeah.
Wow, and communication helps you deliver the thought process of the mediation.
Unfortunately, most of us do not quite understand communication. Communication is to originate an idea, a message or something. You send it to the other person through a channel. We are communicating orally right now. That's the channel. In the course of communication, there might be noise, and the noise may be physical or psychological. Perhaps you're thinking of something while I'm making the statement, and so you do not quite get what I'm saying. And that's why sometimes, particularly when we send children on errand, we repeat the same thing over and over, and then ask them to repeat it to us to confirm that they have understood. Now, that process of getting a response from the other person called feedback is what lets you know that communication has actually taken place. So it is not enough to simply have your say, but you should be concerned that your say is understood, appreciated by the other person, and that the person makes the response that persuades you, convinces you, assures you that he has also understood you. So as a mediator, and a communications freak, I would advise that when people speak, please take your time, concentrate, listen to them very well. Because sometimes even what they don't say is part of what they are saying. The gestures that accompany the things they are saying may also give you an insight into what they want to communicate. Because if someone says, "Oh, what a beautiful lady," and then rolls his eyes in a certain way, he's being ironic, he's being satirical. So if he does that, then you know that what is intended is actually the opposite of that seeming
nice compliment.
It's only when you pay attention to all those things you can now understand and respond appropriately. That response, the feedback, means that communication has taken place in a complete and satisfactory manner. So most of the conflicts and problems we have in this world, if only we could communicate very well, we would overcome them, and they would cease to be areas of disagreement amongst us.
Wow. With all this embodiment of knowledge and achievement, how have you managed to remain this humble?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that I am one of those with the good fortune of growing up in a loving environment. My parents, my father was a clergyman and a teacher. My mother retired as a director of nursing services. And we were loved. And then, of course, when your father is a teacher and clergyman, virtually everybody in the church where he serves also sees you as theirs. So that love has always been there. And that's why psychically, I would say I am so well developed that when I meet other human beings, my primary impulse is also to transmit that love, whether openly or spiritually, in whatever way you want to look at it. But I exude and I transmit love. And human beings, we are as sensitive as animals, like the dog, for instance. A dog is reputed to be very sensitive. A dog may see a person who is not a danger to it or to its owner, and act friendly. But once it senses that a person is a danger, it becomes aggressive and starts barking. And I think human beings are also like that. So if by your nurture and nature, you have got to that level where every human being potentially is seen as a friend, a brother, as somebody that could be useful to you in bringing fresh knowledge, fresh insight to you, then the rest of it is easy. People, it makes it easy for people to accept you. So that's why I say I've been fortunate. I come from a home that love was available in abundance, and I have had also the pleasure of relating with and interacting with people who have shown me such love that having contemptuous feelings or denigrating other human beings is really not part of my makeup. If I am upset with a person, it is only because that person is exhibiting a tendency that is, for me, is unacceptable, is less than what a real human being should be. Someone who exudes and transmits love to those with whom he comes in contact with. And that perhaps is also what has also made me something of a person with an interest in the law, fairness and justice. And once you have fairness and justice, really, then troubles in this world will be highly minimized.
Growing up in a family where love was the bedrock, and achieving all that you did over the years, would it be right to say you did not face any challenges, or there were challenges that you faced along the road? And how did you overcome these challenges?
Well, life, even the smoothest roads have turns and bends. And so when you're driving, you need to take into consideration those turns and bends, and they're like a challenge to you as an individual, going through the journey of life. Yes, perhaps one of the commonest challenges faced by people like me would be what you might call the shock of observing other people acting contrary to all you know and believe in and have been taught, and your parents and other persons have ingrained in you. Sometimes, even as old as I am now, approaching the 6th floor, I still get shocked and confess that perhaps I'm still naive in this respect, because when you have intimations of human wickedness, for instance, you feel as if, oh, what is this? And those actually cause cognitive dissonance in you as a person. But again, as a properly rounded, well brought up person, there's always that opportunity, that capacity to excuse some of those shocking things as an aspect of the depravity of certain human beings. And sometimes, in the course of one's study, learning, and so on, we have also heard that some persons have defective DNAs, and if we even look at our physical attributes, for instance, the person who is maybe deaf or dumb through no fault of his or anything. So if the DNA loops, the physical formation of the human being can give the person that handicap, then it's also likely that psychologically people will have handicaps, and therefore it may make sense to make excuses for them. So when you read about serial killers and all manner of people that engage in unsavory and untoward activities, and then you also accept that, well, while not condoning what they are doing, that there could have been something wrong in their nature or in the way they were nurtured, leading to such conduct. So what generally I do when I'm confronted by such cognitive dissonance is to dust myself up and then look at possible solutions, either directly to the person involved, concerned, or if that's not possible, through some other means, so that those challenges will be arrested. And talking about challenges, for instance, you know, you go through school, it looks as if you have beautiful results and you have wonderful qualifications. It's not all a bed of roses, you know. It's a bed of roses with the thorns as well, because the thorns are there. And what are the thorns? Sometimes poor academic achievement. Because, for instance, when I was in secondary school, I was not a leader in any way. I was one of those who usually on prize giving day would go to the assembly hall, the chapel, and clap for those who had dusted the rest of us and kept us behind, you know. I was one of those, you know. It wasn't until Form 4 that there was some awakening, you know, in my academic abilities. And then when I wrote the school certificate exam when I was in Form 5, not this SS thing now, you know, in Form 5, by the grace of God, I had Division 1. It wasn't so unique because a good number of my mates in my school also had similar results. Including those who had a better aggregate than me. But it was a period of epiphany, of awakening. And then subsequently, I could also say I was never a leader when I was in school. But right now, even those, as I said, that I used to go, I mean, we would go to the prize-giving ceremonies and clap for, have on a number of occasions decided to choose me to now lead them. So life is dynamic, you know, and that's why sometimes I look at children, if they are not doing well, particularly in primary or secondary school, I don't panic. I look at it as one of those things, and that the period or the time of epiphany, of awakening will come for that child, and that child will blossom. You know, all we owe the child is to continue to maintain that spiritual link by lifting up that child to God all the time, so that at the fullness of time, his or her potential will also manifest for the good of humanity.
Beautiful. Listening to you talk is indeed enjoying. It's lovable. No wonder, as an orator, you know, no wonder your previous career place of work, the currently University of Ajuru University
of Education,
of a College of Education. Is it? No, it's a University of Education now.
Ajuru University of Education. Yes.
Chose you to be their orator when you served there, and you had the honors of presenting the citations of late Senator Obi Wali and that of Ken Saruwiwa, two giants of the River State extraction. How did you feel about that?
Well, you see, as I informed you, my first degree, my BA, was in English, and then a master's in oral literature. I didn't merely enjoy reading works of literature. I tried to understand and appreciate the characters, and I also tried to appreciate those before us who had also dealt with works of literature. Ken Saruwiwa was a writer in his own right, and, you know, cut across TV script writing, Barr and Company. You know, most of us were glued to our
television
TVs in those days. And then he was a poet. He was also a novelist and a short story writer, apart from being an essayist. The late Dr. Obianuju Wali, when I was studying African literature in university, you know, there was an article entitled "The Dead End of African Literature," written by him, where he made an interesting proposition, even though I don't necessarily agree with him. But in his opinion, African literature in English was at a dead end, and that true African literature should be in African languages. Now, that's beside, I mean, we're not arguing that point, but These were persons I admired, and they provided an opportunity for me to also test and stretch my oratorial skills. As I said, as college orator, I performed their citations. And you know, the citation is one of the most creative things that any person, a communicator, a writer, a speaker will be able to make. Some people can recraft, use your CV and craft your citation in a very creative manner.
Yeah.
They may not have the capacity to present it themselves, but by the grace of God, I had both. I could write and I could also present. And it was really an honor. In fact, that experience made me a friend of the late Ken Saro-Wiwa. So much so that a couple of years later, I was the only critic that did a work on him at the International Conference on African Literature and the English Language in Calabar, organized by the Professor Emeyono, you know, and it was subsequently published in African Literature and African Historical Experiences. So, and we maintained close communication until, you know, the tragic events that eventually led to his passing. So much so that when my friend Amayinabo Pubo Damnabo wrote Saro-Wiwa's biography, I was chosen to be the one to review the book, you know, with Professor E.J. Alagwa there. And I made a very important point, you know, the false modesty of people saying, I don't know why I was chosen to do this when there are more qualified people and so on and so forth. I used that opportunity to debunk that false modesty. If you have been chosen, don't tell the world that the man who chose you exhibited an error of judgment. It is because you can do it. And so do it in a way that will further confirm his original decision to have you be the one perform that particular service or function. So yes, for me, that's been it. But again, before I became college orator, I had the pleasure, the opportunity of emceeing events in the church. People would request me to MC their weddings. And when I became a member of Rotary Club of the University of Jos, I was appointed Sergeant at Arms, responsible for introducing guests and agenda items. And all those experiences, you know, of course, also culminated in some of the creative things I have done subsequently.
Lovely, lovely. So having served in various leadership positions, what is the greatest lesson that you have learned and that you're willing to share to humanity?
I think it's actually a simple lesson. The lesson is love men and let men love you. Be open, be transparent, be willing to hear others and accept their opinions. In fact, in some of the positions of leadership that I have served in, some of the best ideas that have been executed and which people attribute to me have actually come from others. And that's because I maintain that openness and willingness to listen to them and accept the things that I knew made sense, which I didn't originally envision. Let me also say that it is also important that in leadership, your greatest support structure is actually family. And when I say family, immediate family, extended family, community family, professional family, church family, all the people that in one way or the other have some bearing on how you're going to execute a particular office or position. They are the members of family. As president of Baptist High School, National President, Baptist High School, Port Harcourt Old Students Association, my greatest support structure was the 1979 set. My classmates, they showed up for me in dues payment, in other things. They were just there. So And when you have an exemplary family, outsiders have no excuse than to just follow along.
Amazing. Teacher, communicator, mediator, and a lawyer. Amongst all this, which one has brought you more satisfaction?
It's very hard to say. It's like asking someone who is your favorite child. However, I think everything revolves around the basic fulcrum of who Karibi George is.
Okay.
Communication.
Wow.
And to that extent, I am compelled, because you have asked the question, to say I'm most fulfilled and satisfied as a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations. Hello Nigerians, my name is Karibi George, a lawyer, certified teacher, mediator, communications professional, and author. I'm here to commend to you Write on Civil Servant, a corporate communications manual for writers, civil servants, and other persons in bureaucratic environment whose responsibility it is to write. You may obtain this book from www.karibigeorge.org or the NIPR River State Chapter Office, 11 Oluyole Street, Old GRA, Port Harcourt.
Wow, amazing. So before, something shaped you up, something inspired you. Either it's something you saw, something or someone mentored you. Can you tell us what inspired you to become who you are today?
Well, a number of persons have actually shaped me in different ways. Well, my parents, that's a given. My family members, we could also say that's a given. But I would like to cite Professor Godwin O.M. Tassier, who was my Dean of Arts at the University of Jos and was also one-time provost of the River State College of Education. He's had a tremendous impact on me in my academic and professional development. I have also had the pleasure of working with various people in different spheres. I can't forget Dr. Doris Daba Amakri Kowan. I can't forget the Honorable Justice Daisy Wotube Okocha, the first female Chief Judge of Rivers State. I can't forget Florence Ekie, who is my mother in broadcasting. I don't know, it looks as if my list even has more women than men.
More women impacted you, it's obvious.
But again, you know, there have been a number of others. If I haven't mentioned them, it's not because they didn't impact me, but I just thought these persons deserve, you know, to be recognized, because at certain junctions in my life,
they had key
there.
inputs.
Yes.
Okay, sir. The theme for the show is providing leadership in challenging times. And if you would agree with me, we have a leadership problem in society. There is a total lack of leadership, particularly from the governing bodies or those responsible in government. From your own perspective, what would you ascribe to be the problem, and how do you think we can profile beautiful and lovely leadership that could help society?
Well, first of all, we need a proper mindset and orientation to begin to talk about leadership. Leadership must go beyond personal, individual ego to the collective interest. You know, if you can think of the good of the people, that's a starting point, because that's going to inspire the things you will envision. And talking about leadership, I find that in most cases, provided you create the enabling environment, most persons, even very young people, are sufficiently creative and can find their way through the business of economic relations. And so leadership should think more in terms of providing opportunities for every one of us to aspire and excel in our various ways. Now, 2023 is just around the corner, and I know that a number of candidates are going to present what they feel they need to give to us. One expression that I've often heard, but which regrettably most leaders are not practicing, is a bottom-top approach. And that's why, for example, some years ago, a political leader went to a community, and in a riverine community, and found that they had to fold their trousers, remove their shoes, and wade through the muddy, wet water to be able to get to the community. And in the course of, the meeting with the members of the community, he now made a pronouncement that he was going to ensure that a proper landing jetty was constructed there. But do you know the interesting thing? The CDC chairman, in his response, said, yes, we understand we have this constraint of landing jetty, and you have already informed us that you intend to provide the enabling environment for a landing jetty to be constructed here. But if you don't mind, sir, we would rather want you to give us a water project. Now, the interesting thing was that the water project was significantly less expensive than the landing jetty. So, in other words, even though you think you have the best interest of the people at heart, why don't you give them an opportunity to let you know what they really want? And you may find that you will spend less and satisfy them more, which is what we said earlier, that a mediator finds what satisfies the parties rather than what you think should be good for them. So I would like leaders that would also not eliminate all the segments of the society. One of the governorship candidates, for instance, was shocked when a child told him that, uncle, please, when you become governor, we would like you to make sure Port Harcourt Zoo is working. That is the interest of that child.
And it's a valid interest.
Very valid interest, but a typical governorship candidate may look at it in terms of, okay, under my overall tourism agenda, we'll look at Port Harcourt Zoo. But Port Harcourt Zoo should be done for that child and other children like that child. So leadership requires you to become a spy. Disguise yourself. Mingle with the ordinary folk. Know their aspirations and desires and try to meet those needs, not what you want to give to them. Unfortunately, a good number of our leaders think that, what you might call poster projects are the things that make them recognized and appreciated as leaders. No, those poster projects may not have the kind of impact that the little drops of water all over the place will have on the people. So leadership is the people first, generally. If you can do that, then you'll be successful as a leader. As
we approach the 2023 electionary season, where we're expected to choose our various leaders, both at the federal and the state level here. Could you advise, take out a moment to advise Nigerians and Rivers people on what should be the reason for why they should cast their vote?
Well, unfortunately, there has been some culture of negligence. My vote won't count, so why do I bother, you know? But you will know when your vote will actually count. And with all the technology being deployed in the electoral process, there is a strong likelihood that votes will actually count. So there's a need for us to do the first thing first, get our PVCs, the permanent voter cards. Get your permanent voter card, ensure everything is in order. I think there are a number of sites or portals that you could go to and confirm. I have already done that my card is valid, my voting unit, everything is in order. You know, to cast your votes. Now, to whom should you cast your vote? Listen to the candidates. Confirm that they are also listening to you. And when you listen to them, sometimes listen to what they don't even say. Well, maybe I'm asking too much of laymen, ordinary people, but communication persons can tell what you have said from what you did not say. You know, if you have that ability, do that. And then determine for yourself how engaging the person's communication is. Anyone who is petulant and thrives in simply abusing people or being defensive at the first sign of objection or criticism to what he or she has said, rather than accepting the criticism as well-intended and perhaps, you know, adjusting his communication and modifying his or her position. Anyone who does not do that, but simply dwells on abusing and attacking people for pointing out things that they think he ought to take into consideration, then we should be weary and wary of such people, and as much as possible, avoid them. We need people who will listen to us, and in listening to us, also communicate with us, so that if sometimes, you know, a leader is endowed with certain spiritual properties, capacities that and may see what you are not seeing. At such a time, a leader who is able to communicate that vision and understanding to the people will also be preferred to one who seems to be a brick wall. You can't reach him or her, and she is also not, or he is also not communicating with you. So these are the things I would want us to consider. First, make sure you are eligible to vote. Get your permanent voter card. And then two, interrogate and engage with these leaders. Campaigns are starting very shortly. Presidential campaign just started. Governorship and others will be starting soon. There will be opportunities for these aspirants to engage with every one of us in different places and forums. So it's your responsibility. If you're a market person, be at the market or wherever it is when these leaders will be coming to talk with you, and present your concerns and see how the extent to which they are able to integrate those concerns in their policy documents before the election.
Wow. Dear Rivers people, you have heard from our guest today, who is a leader, a certified leader, experienced leader, and one who has continued to show leadership in all capacities. But sir, in all these glorious, amazing leadership jobs that you have done, what is the one regret that you have, like something you didn't do well and you wish you could do better?
I may not be able to recall a specific thing, but I would like to say on one or two occasions I have regretted not being sufficiently decisive. about things to be done. Procrastination is not a virtue in any leader. No matter how contemplative you might be, you will be called upon to take a decision one way or the other. When that time comes, please act and don't keep people in suspense.
Wow, thank you, thank you. Reading from your profile, you are a lawn tennis player, an avid, there's this word attached to it, avid lawn tennis player. And you started this from your days in the secondary school at a very young age. If you got into the university at the age of 16, and then you started tennis much, much earlier, maybe as a result of privilege or because the facilities were there for you to utilize. Today in our society, our school sports is even dead. Children don't have the ability or the opportunity to play these games at the schools anymore. This is a problem of leadership. Rather than focus on developing the youths, the children for the future, we have a system that undermines them, that does not take them or factor them into the plannings. How would you advise, what do you think can be done to change or negate this ugly situation?
Well, when you asked me to mention persons who had impacted me, I was looking more in terms of my professional life. And I omitted somebody, the late Tony T. Jack, TTJ for short. That was what we called him, Coach TTJ. Coach TTJ was a tennis coach, a staff of the River State, and I really can't tell whether it was Ministry of Sports or Sports Council, you know, because you have a director of sports in the Sports Council. Whether they are, the lines are blurred because they work together. TTJ, I was in Baptist High School at the time, and we had a lawn tennis court. Now, that also goes to the root of the facilities available in schools. We had a lawn tennis court, and I joined those who were playing lawn tennis with my table tennis understanding. No, table tennis understanding. Now, technical school students were camping in my school with a view to taking part in a national competition, and Coach TTJ came to coach them. Now, when he arrived, he saw me hit a shot. And of course, as a responsible, respectful child, I left the court so he could have time with his wards. But he called me and said, "You're a tennis player?" I said, "Well, I love the game, not that I'm a player." He said, "Come, I like what I saw. I'll teach you tennis." He didn't merely teach me all the grips, continental, western, eastern, for the different shots, you know, ground strokes, backhand, ground strokes, volley, service, everything. Coach TTJ followed me up until within 1 year, between 1978 and 1979, I had the privilege of representing River State at Oluyole 79, the National Sports Festival in Ibadan. You know, my first tennis racket, my shoes, and other consumables like balls, TTJ gave to me. And TTJ went round schools in River State, picking players. So what you're asking is, let's return to basics. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. The practice at the time was, as much as possible, let the schools have those facilities. Yeah. Then secondly, let the coaches from the Ministry of Sports visit the schools and teach interested children. I started tennis in 1978. It's a lifelong sport. I'm nearly 60 years of age, and I play tennis with the energy of a young man. Well, I can't compete against 20-something-year-old professionals, but I can hold my own against 30-something-year-old boys or men, because I learned to play the game properly. And of course, for the years I was at the University of Jos, I was Jos #1 for your information. You know?
Wow.
And I've also represented River State at the senior level. I've represented Port Harcourt Club against Accra Sports Club. They had the clay court. We're not familiar with clay court, but went there, and we had the reputation of the first Nigerian club to beat them on their clay courts there. You know,
wow.
So I wish we could have the same thing. Unfortunately, the story in the civil service is, oh, there are no resources to employ. But those no resources to employ may be robbing us of our representatives. Some of my schoolmates, my seniors in school, JJQ, Commonwealth medalists in athletics, they were all products of this system where coaches came to the schools and identified talents to use at national and international competitions. And that's why today I praise a woman like Stella Epegu, you know, with the Kodean Sports Foundation, who is doing wonderfully with young children. And kudos also to the tennis section, Port Harcourt Club, for giving them their facilities to train. And they're representing Nigeria in different places. So let's return to that culture. Let the civil service employ people to do the jobs they are supposed to do. If we had adequate social welfare officers, some of the young ones that go astray and become a thorn in our flesh could have been properly arrested, cancelled at that level, and steered towards more creative endeavors rather than the untoward characters that they became. So it's just a matter of doing the basics, what it was.
Let's just go back to the basics and then improve the system.
That's all.
You know, growing up, my school, I attended River State University International Secondary School. Now, we had the opportunity of using the university's facilities, you know, for sports development and trainings. But you see, I have looked around the states. There was a time we used to have school sports festivals, and it used to be big for us. Now, those things are not there anymore. You know, children just loiter about. Some of them now, instead of looking up to personality who have made it through the sports for inspiration, what they see around them are the cultists, those who engage in illicit activities and appropriate themselves the title of senior man and senior whatever. And now these young ones want to grow up to become senior men because of what they see.
Regrettably. But I'm happy, at least I take some consolation in the fact that I'm able to show my children some of my medals from sporting competitions and the certificates that I earned. Not to talk about trophies. If you come to my sitting room, you'll see the trophies I've won in tennis. You will also see plaques that I've won in that area. Not to mention even some of the semi-professional tournaments that I played, organized by NNPC, NASCO, and so on, where the prizes included cash.
Sir, with all this experience, if the opportunity comes, it's not about the opportunity. Would you be willing to mentor the next generation, those who are in their secondary schools, from your vast experience of knowledge?
Mentoring is a process that takes place both at a proximate and non-proximate level. There are people who see us as influencers, admire us, and try to model their lives around what we do by the grace of God. And then there are those who are close to us by virtue of maybe being members of the same church, the same neighborhood, or other meetings, maybe at the community, family level. We encourage them, and I'd like to commend most older persons. Please, when these young ones have their doubts and fears, listen to them. The answer you give can steer somebody in a direction that would make that person a lot greater than you. And that greatness will definitely translate into goodness for the rest of the community.
Amazing. As part of your profile and what we have been wowed on, it is on record that you have authored several books, multiple publications in journals. Tell us about this.
Well, 3 books really. My first attempt at being an author of a book, not articles in journals or chapters in books. I'm talking about a book written by me, was the Master of Ceremonies Handbook. And it came out of inspiration. Well, you have been doing this MC thing. There are certain principles, protocol, and basics of practice, discipline, and so on. Why don't you put it down for those who are interested in doing that? And that was as far back as the year 2000, the Master of Ceremonies Handbook. A small book containing even appendices of order of protocol, national, state level. At the time, because we were not so far from military regime, even the order of protocol for military regime was included as an appendix in that book. So that's one. The other one is Tales from School of Laws, which is actually, I'm not saying that those are my law school memoirs, but things that arose from my experiences at the law school. I tried as a student of literature, to translate experiences into something, even though basically factual, but presented with humor, in a way that people could associate with and read and relax and laugh. It all started when I commenced sending emails to my friends, detailing my law school experiences. So it's in epistolary form, and then a few articles reflecting, again, philosophically on 1 or 2 experiences, including tips to upcoming students of law, how they can pass the law school exams. Because unfortunately, some of the experiences I had and which offended me. In fact, there was a day in church, someone said, how is law school going? I said, oh, beautiful. And the person said, well, the important thing is to ensure that you pass at first sitting. And I didn't find that statement encouraging. So I turned to my wife and I asked, do I look like somebody who will not be able to pass this exam at first sitting? Why are people sounding so negative? So what I try to do is do an article and give counsel on things to be done and things not to do. Based on my own experiences, of course, I did very well in the law school exam to have a 2-1. And you know that it means my worst score, because in law school, during my time, your worst score is your result.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
If you're going to have a first class, it means you didn't score less than 70 in any of the courses. A 2-1 means you didn't score. They don't use average, CGPA. No, it's your worst score that is your result. So to make a 2-1, it means you must have scored a minimum of 60 in all your courses. So at least I had the experience. I decided to share with others. And then what I consider my magnum opus, also 2022, is the book entitled Right On, Civil Servant. Right is W-R-I-T-E. Right On, Civil Servant. As head of administration, I have observed that the typical civil servant does not understand that the primary mode of communication is through writing. And when people express to you their worries, their fears, their concerns, and you say, write it, put it in writing, in a form of an appeal or an application to the chief executive, some just run away because of the fear of writing. Now, what I did, the inspiration was various forms of expository writing, what in public relations terms you would call corporate communications. You know, so it's a corporate communications manual for bureaucratic settings target, but all persons operating in bureaucratic settings will enjoy right on civil servant, and there are models. You know, it's a doing book, and that's why I'm happy. My chairman, the chairman of the River State UB board, you know, said it's a book for the desk, not for the shelf. In other words, keep it on your desk, consult it, and it will do you good. You know, so that's my what I consider my magnum opus. And I in addition to giving you samples of the various forms of writing, I looked at the psychology of writing. I also looked at the grammar of writing, common mistakes and things you know you could avoid. Remember, I'm a BA in English, you know. And then I also looked at issues of use of digital devices in communication, you know, in the civil service. Incidentally, the Supreme Court of Nigeria has ruled that a text message is a valid document of communicating court hearing date to people. So it's not something we can run away from. And I challenge most of the civil servants who are more like my generation. Please, I don't think it's a matter of pride to say, oh, my secretary is typing it. Type it yourself. Type it yourself. You know, I had my experience about 20 years ago. Had to draft something for my chairman, and then when I went to look for the secretary to do the typing, the gentleman had traveled to his home because it was weekend. Okay. And I was compelled to go to a business center. Why would I take confidential government matter to a business center? I just didn't like the idea. So I challenged myself, and I do my own typing now.
Oh, so this lovely book, the Corporate Communication Manual or Guide for Civil Servants and even those even in the corporate business sector. Yeah. How can one get a hand of this book?
All right. First of all, physically, it's available from my office, the River State UB board. It's available at the River State chapter office of the Nigeria Institute of Public Relations, 11 Oluyole Street. That's Power Complex, opposite the EFCC zonal office. Okay. It's also available at the bookshop of my church, First Baptist Church, 93 Agri Road. Okay. And by the grace of God, the e-book is available on www.karibigeorge.org. One word. It's also available on Amazon, okadabooks.com, and kobo.com. Yes.
Wonderful. Dearly beloved guests, wherever you're watching this interview from, this is a book you ought to have. Details of the book is on the screen, and where you can find them is also on the screen. Please do well to get it and better yourself in communication, whether in governance, in government offices, or in the public sector, or even the private sector. Make well and do well for yourselves to get this book so that you will become the best at communicating. Mr. Karibi George, wow, it's been an awesome, lovely, wonderful process of having you here in this studio. I do not want this interview to come to an end, but time would not permit us. Can we reschedule for more, because there seems to be a lot more that you have, so that you can dish out to Nigerians and make them better people?
As we say in court, as the court pleases.
Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Hope we'll do this again.
Thank you.
God bless you. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.